The elevator opened at 7:59, and Vanessa Cole stepped out like a verdict already delivered. Charcoal suit jacket, ivory silk top underneath, her light brown hair pulled back so severely it looked sculpted rather than styled. 40 stories above the financial district, the offices of Cole Ashford Capital took up the entire top floor of the Ellery Tower. Glass everywhere, cold light everywhere, and a silence engineered to remind everyone exactly where they stood. Most of the staff were at their desks by 7:45. The rest had learned it was safer not to come in at all. Vanessa was 35. She'd been running the firm for 4 years, ever since the previous CEO stepped down and handed her a company known for precision and a balance sheet that let investors sleep easy at night. She hadn't built that reputation through warmth. She'd built it by being right, by reaching conclusions before anyone else had finished asking the question, by running the workday like a machine that either operated flawlessly or didn't operate at all. Her assistant, Mira, was waiting by the glass doors with a tablet and a coffee. Morning. The Ashford West review is at 9. Boardroom's ready. Whitfield's team confirmed. All 12 are in. The lakefront figures are on your desk. Good. Vanessa took the coffee without slowing down. She hadn't smiled yet. She rarely did before 10. Department heads stepped aside automatically. 4 years had taught Vanessa Cole moved through a room differently than other people, not out of cruelty, though some would have called it that, but because she operated on a single frequency, outcome. She saw what existed, not what might have. She heard what was said, not what was meant. Nuance, in her mind, was just the thing people hid behind when they'd failed to deliver. There was one rule she enforced without a single exception. Punctuality wasn't a personal preference to her, it was a philosophy. When you're late, you're making a statement. You're telling everyone your time outweighs theirs. I won't tolerate that statement in this building. She meant it. Over 4 years, she'd dismissed 7 people for chronic lateness, never with hostility, just paperwork and a face that gave nothing away. The 8th was already somewhere in the building that morning. He just didn't know it yet. His name was Marcus Doyle, 38 years old. He worked in facilities, the crew that kept elevators running true and the server room from cooking itself alive. Unglamorous work, the kind nobody noticed until it stopped happening. He'd been at Cole Ashford 2 years and 3 months, and in that whole stretch, his name had shown up in the attendance log exactly twice, both times for clocking in 90 seconds early. By every measure that mattered, Marcus Doyle was a man you could set a clock to. He was also, this particular morning, nowhere to be found. His shift began at 7:30. By 8:15, there was still no trace of him. 2 co-workers in facilities had already noticed. Denise Okafor, who ran electrical maintenance, had texted him twice with no reply. Ray Fontaine, the floor supervisor, had logged it as a no-show and flagged HR, reluctantly because Ray had known Marcus for 2 years and knew no-show wasn't a category the man belonged to. But the flag had already gone out, and Vanessa Cole had already seen it. The boardroom at Cole Ashford sat 20. For the Ashford West review, 12 chairs were filled with department heads and senior analysts. The 13th chair, nearest the door, belonged to the facilities liaison, whose job that morning was confirming every building system was cleared for the infrastructure discussion on the agenda. That chair was empty. Vanessa noticed the instant she walked in at 8:58. She set her folder down and looked toward Mira by the door. "Where's Doyle?" "Not in the building yet, Miss Cole. Badge hasn't scanned." "Who called him?" "Ray tried twice. Nothing." The room went very quiet. 12 people suddenly found their hands, their laptops, or a spot on the wall deeply interesting, anywhere but Vanessa's face. She sat, opened her folder, and ran the meeting without him, pulling the facilities notes off the shared drive and presenting them herself. It wasn't difficult, it wasn't even much of an inconvenience, but it was wrong, and Vanessa Cole felt wrongness the way other people felt a change in temperature, immediately, physically, before reason had a chance to talk her out of it.
By 9:45, the meeting was winding down. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn right away. She finished her sentence first, set her pen down with a deliberateness the whole room recognized, and then turned.
Marcus Doyle stood in the doorway. Same gray facilities uniform he always wore, except the left sleeve was soaked through, and there was a smear of dried mud along one boot. His hair was damp at the temples on a morning that wasn't wet at all. He was breathing like a man who'd been moving hard for a long stretch and was trying to not let it show. His jaw was set. His eyes weren't afraid, and that was the strange part, because everyone else in that room was a little afraid of what came next. He wasn't. "Mr. Doyle?" Vanessa said, level, not loud. "Miss Cole." He stepped in. "I know I'm late. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation, no preamble, no note from a doctor, no mention of traffic, no phone held up showing missed calls, just, "I'm sorry." An analyst coughed. Someone shifted in their seat. Vanessa studied him a moment. She'd considered asking for an explanation before. She'd extended that courtesy to others in the past. But something about the flatness of his apology, the complete absence of any attempt to defend himself, read to her like a decision, like he'd chosen not to bother. And she took that as its own form of disrespect. "You were scheduled to be here," she said. "Your input was required. No call ahead, no message, no arrangement made for your absence." A pause. "This isn't the first conversation we've had about time in this building." "No," he said. "I know." "Then you understand what happens next." He didn't answer. "You're terminated, Mr. Doyle, effective now. Mira will handle your paperwork." She looked back down at her folder. "Thank you for your service." The room went utterly silent. Not the comfortable quiet of a settled argument, but the held breath kind, the kind that comes from watching something you can't look away from. Marcus stood there 3 seconds, nodded once, turned and walked out. No slammed door, barely a sound. He had a locker in the basement, small, gray, wedged between the breaker panel and the emergency equipment cabinet, a strip of masking tape reading Doyle in black marker. He'd put it there himself his first week, back when the numbering system confused him, and he didn't want his things ending up on someone else's shelf. Little details like that were everywhere once you knew where to look. He opened it without rushing. Inside, a gray canvas backpack, worn thin at both straps, a spare of shoes, a paperback, a small framed photo he'd kept there since day one, not at a desk because he didn't have one, but here, where he could see it before every shift if he wanted. The photo showed a girl with his same dark eyes, maybe 6 or 7, laughing at something out of frame, missing a front tooth, the kind of laugh that hurt your whole face just to look at. He packed the photo first, then the book, then the shoes. Denise found him before he'd zipped the bag shut. She came down the stairs fast, like she'd half run the whole way. "Marcus," she stopped when she saw his face. "She did it." "It's fine." "It's not fine. Did you even tell her what happened?" "Doesn't matter now." "Of course it matters. Go back up there and tell her what happened. She doesn't know. She fired you and she doesn't even know." He zipped the bag. "I'll be okay, Denise." She looked at him, and whatever she saw there made her stop pushing. Not defeat, something quieter, more settled than that. "Tell Ray I said thanks. He was good to work with." "Tell him yourself. Just go back up there and—" He slung the bag over one shoulder, left arm only, she noticed, the right held stiff, and headed for the stairs. At the bottom he paused, like he might turn around and say something else. He didn't. He kept walking. Upstairs, 2 junior analysts watched him push through the revolving doors and vanish into the street. One muttered something dismissive, the other laughed. Neither of them had any idea what they were laughing at. Vanessa was back at her desk by 10:15, working the lakefront numbers with a red pen and the focus of someone trying to outrun a feeling she hadn't maimed yet. It was small. She was practiced at keeping small feelings small. The figures themselves were simple enough. A yield discrepancy in the Q3 numbers, fixable with a revised projection model. She was 3/4 through her notes when her personal phone buzzed on the corner of the desk. She glanced at the screen. Sophie, school office. Sophie was 8. She called from the school landline once a week, usually Thursdays, to check in. Today was Tuesday. Vanessa's hand was already moving before her brain caught up. "Sophie, what happened? Are you okay?" "I'm okay." A breath. "I'm at school. Mrs. Alden's with me. But, Mom, I need to tell you something." "Tell me." "This morning, walking from drop-off, you know I take the side path because it's shorter." Vanessa closed her eyes for a half-second. She'd told Sophie twice to use the main entrance. Sophie liked the side path better, and Vanessa hadn't pushed the point because the neighborhood was safe and the school was 2 blocks from home. "I know the path. There was a man. He was just there, looking at me weird. And then he started walking the same way I was walking, and he was getting closer, and I tried to go faster, but he—" Sophie's voice cracked. "He grabbed my arm, Mom, really hard." The room went still. "And then," Sophie said, quieter now, something underneath the fear that Vanessa couldn't place right away, something almost like wonder. "This other man came out of nowhere. He was big, and he got between us, and the bad man tried to push past him, and they were kind of fighting, and the bad man hit him, and the man who helped me, he didn't fall down. He stayed right there. He kept saying, 'You're safe, you're safe, you're safe.' And I was crying, and he said, 'Take my hand,' and we walked to the corner and waited until a teacher saw us." Vanessa's grip tightened on the phone. "Sophie, the man who helped you, do you know who he was?" A pause. "He told me his name. He said he works at your building, Mom. Said he's worked there 2 years. His name's Marcus." The pen in Vanessa's other hand hit the floor. She didn't reach for it. "He said his name's Marcus Doyle," Sophie went on, careful now, small. "I asked if you knew him, and he said yes. Said he used to work in facilities." Another breath, slower. "Mom, he had blood on his face from where the man hit him, and he was hurt, but he kept talking to me, kept telling me it was okay until I stopped shaking. He sat with me on the curb for 20 minutes. Vanessa sank back into her chair. The lakefront numbers sat in front of her. The red pen lay on the floor. "And, Mom, he didn't go inside when he left, didn't go to a hospital. He walked toward your building." Silence. "He's the one you fired today," Sophie said. It wasn't a question. "Isn't he?" The school forwarded the police report at 10:47. Vanessa was already in the car, phone on speaker, Mira on the line, pulling the building's exterior footage. Birch Street's 3 blocks east of the side entrance, the school drop-off runs along Alder, which is parallel. If he came from the bus depot on 5th, he'd have cut through Birch. That's the direct line to our service entrance. City cameras take 20 minutes to pull archive, but I've got our own exterior feed. Did he badge in? Never badged in this morning, but there's outside coverage. Give me 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Vanessa sat in the back seat, watching the city slide past the window, feeling something she didn't have a word for yet, something with the weight and shape of a stone she'd apparently been carrying for years without noticing. She thought about the meeting, the empty chair, his face when she'd handed down the verdict, that particular stillness. She thought about what it would take for a man like Marcus Doyle, 2 years, not one absence, a strip of masking tape on a basement locker, to show up late without a fight in him. "I'm sorry," that was all he'd said. Not, "I'm sorry, but you should hear this." Not, "Give me a chance to explain." Just, "I'm sorry," like a man who'd already decided the explanation wouldn't change the outcome.
like someone who understood the system he stood inside, knew its rules cold, and had chosen, despite everything, to take the consequence rather than offer a defense that might still fail him. Her phone buzzed, Mira's voice, sending the clip now.
She watched it on her phone. Timestamp 7:31 a.m. The footage came from the camera above the service entrance, angled to catch the alley approach. Gray morning, overcast, flat, honest light. Marcus entered frame from the left at 7:31, walking fast, bag on both shoulders, head down, normal pace. Then he stopped. He'd heard something. He turned back toward the mouth of the alley and froze there 2 seconds. Then he was moving again, running this time, and vanished out of frame. The camera didn't catch what happened next, couldn't, but 2 minutes and 43 seconds later he reappeared, moving slower now, right arm held tight against his side. Beside him was a girl, small, 8 years old, dark hair in a ponytail, backpack askew, her face turned up to him with an expression that even in grainy footage was unmistakable. Total, absolute trust. He walked her to the edge of the frame, crouched to her level, said something. She nodded. He put a hand briefly on her shoulder, then straightened and waited until a school aide in a yellow vest appeared and started toward them. Then he turned back toward the building, stood at the service door a moment, adjusted the bag on his shoulders, the right arm clearly wrong, held stiff, wiped his face with the back of his left hand. Then he went in, went to work, went to a meeting he'd already missed to face a consequence he already knew was coming, and said nothing about any of it. Vanessa stopped the video and checked the timestamp again, 7:31 to 7:34, 3 minutes from when he entered frame to when he came back with Sophie. 3 minutes in which something violent had happened to him, and he'd absorbed it, steadied a terrified child, handed her off to safety, and gone in to work. "Mira," she said, "find out where he is." While the car moved, she pulled his personnel file on her tablet. Mira had already flagged it to her inbox. Vanessa opened it with the same clinical efficiency she brought to everything, expecting the usual 2 pages of standard facilities paperwork. She got 12. Marcus Doyle, 38. Before Cole Ashford, 6 years with the City Fire Department, Urban Search and Rescue. Before that, 4 years as an Army combat medic, 2 deployments, a service commendation, 2 citations for valor, 1 for actions during a non-combat structural collapse, 3 civilian casualties he'd prevented from becoming 6. She read that line twice. After the fire department, a note from HR intake, left following personal bereavement. Certified EMT lapsed, applied for entry-level facilities role, no advancement requests made. She knew what personal bereavement meant in HR shorthand. It was what they wrote when someone had lost somebody and didn't want to talk about it. She pulled the supplemental file, flagged at intake as optional reading. Personal background submitted voluntarily by applicant. His name at the top. Below it, a paragraph he'd apparently written himself as part of an unrequired cover letter for a facilities job paying $29 an hour. My wife, Renee, died 3 years ago this past March. I have a daughter, Mia, who's 7. I left the fire department because I needed to be home before dark, and the shift structure made that impossible. I'm looking for work I already know how to do, where I can be reliable and be there when my daughter needs me. I understand this isn't a senior position. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Vanessa read it twice, then a 3rd time. She set the tablet on the seat beside her and looked out the window. The car was on the avenue now, the city ordinary and relentless around them. A fire truck passed going the other way, lights on, siren still off.
She thought about a man twice decorated for valor who'd pulled people out of collapsed buildings, who'd spent a decade running toward the things everyone else ran from, and who then looked at a facilities posting at a mid-sized capital firm and thought, yes, this is what I need, to be home before dark. She thought about the empty chair, about I'm sorry, about a 7-year-old named Mia and a framed photo in a basement locker. Her phone buzzed. Mira, carefully neutral. He's at St. Clement's, urgent care, not the ER. Walked in himself about 40 minutes ago. Denise called it in. She'd been tracking his last known location. And a pause. She thought you'd want to know. Vanessa picked the tablet back up, looked at the commendation, the line about being home before dark, the photograph she hadn't seen yet and wouldn't for another hour. Tell the driver, she said.
St. Clement's Urgent Care on West Division was small, clean, and smelled like antiseptic and the particular anxiety of people waiting to hear something they didn't want to hear. A woman with a toddler in a carrier sat by the window. An older man filled out a form with a hand that shook slightly. A muted cooking show played on the corner TV. Vanessa walked in wearing her charcoal jacket and silk top, and the expression she usually wore heading into difficult negotiations, and the woman at the front desk looked up and immediately understood this wasn't a patient. "I'm looking for a patient, Marcus Doyle. He'd have come in around 40 minutes ago." "I can't confirm patient information to, I'm his employer." A beat. "Former employer. I need to speak with him." A moment of professional judgment from the desk clerk. "She's in Bay 3, she said. "He told us no visitors, but—" She looked at Vanessa's face. "I'll let him know you're here." Vanessa sat in a chair near the wall. She didn't check her phone, didn't review anything. She sat with her hands folded, staring unseeing at the cooking show, and waited. She didn't wait long. "You can go back," the clerk said, already moving. "Bay 3. The curtain hung half open. A young nurse was finishing a wrap on Marcus's right forearm. He sat on the exam table in his work pants and a hospital gown, uniform shirt folded on the chair beside him. A line of butterfly closures ran above his left eyebrow, and the bruising along his jaw was already deepening into purple, still swelling the way facial bruises do early on. He looked up when she came through the curtain. He didn't look surprised. The nurse murmured something to him and left without meeting Vanessa's eyes. The silence held a beat. "How'd you know I was here?" he asked. "Denise Okafor." Something crossed his face, not quite a smile. Good of her. Vanessa stood near the curtain. She was a woman precise in nearly everything, who chose her words with care and delivered them, expecting them to land exactly where she aimed. She stood there and found she had nothing. Every possible sentence felt wrong in a slightly different way. Marcus looked at his bandaged arm. 3 cracked ribs, he said, not broken. Forearms a sprain. They're saying 2 weeks of stiffness. He glanced up. The wrist's the one that'll make typing hard. "Your daughter, Mia, she's at school. Doesn't know any of this happened. I'd like to keep it that way a little longer if I can." Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it again. "The man who grabbed her daughter," Marcus said. "Your daughter. I didn't know who she belonged to. For the record, she said her name was Sophie, said her mom worked in the building. Didn't put it together until right now, that it's yours." Vanessa felt something behind her sternum she didn't have words for. "He ran when a car turned onto the street. About my size, but his hands were free and mine weren't. I had to keep one on the kid." He tilted his head slightly, the gesture of one professional discussing tactics with another, flat, no editorializing. "He got the ribs in before I could reposition. Forearm was from the last grab. He was going for her again." A pause. "Didn't get her." "No," Vanessa said. "He didn't. She's a brave kid. She was scared. She was scared and she did exactly what I told her. Stayed close, didn't run. Smart." Vanessa sat in the chair meant for visiting family. Strange being the visitor,
the one who'd come to ask forgiveness rather than grant it. "I watched the camera footage," she said. He said nothing. "You went to work afterwards. 3 cracked ribs. I was already late as it was." The plainness of it hit her like something physical. She stared at the tile a moment. "Mr. Doyle, why didn't you tell me what happened?" He was quiet long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. "Wouldn't have changed anything," he said finally. "Or I didn't know if it would. And if it didn't," he stopped, started again. "I've worked places where excuses were currency. You spent them for time, for second chances. I got tired of watching people spend them. I'd rather be the guy who says sorry and means it and takes what's coming than the guy who explains himself and waits to see if it's enough." Vanessa looked at him. "That's either very principled or very exhausting." "Both." A pause. "Mostly the second one."
She stayed 20 minutes. She said what she needed to say, not performed, not softened for effect. Wrong, not in the narrow sense of a decision made without full information, though that was true too, but wrong in the fuller sense, that she'd looked at an empty chair and seen an offense against order instead of a gap that might have held something she simply hadn't known yet. He listened. He didn't make it easy on her by nodding along or offering absolution before she'd finished. When she was done, he said, "You didn't know. I should have asked." "Maybe, but you built a system. The system had rules. I walked into it knowing what they were." He looked at his bandaged arm. "I'm not angry at you. You'd have every right to expect that I would be. I'm not, though. Tired's closer to it, if I'm being honest." She understood that sentence completely. Outside, the sky, which had been building towards something all morning, finally let go. Thin, announcing rain first, then the real thing, loud against the narrow clinic windows. The woman with the toddler sighed with mild exasperation. The cooking show kept playing. "I want to offer you your job back. That's the first thing. And I want to offer you a different one, something that actually reflects what you're capable of. Not facilities, something in operations, emergency protocols. We've had a safety director position open for 4 months." A pause. "It pays more than double what you were making. You'd have a desk. You could set your own hours within reason." Another pause. "You'd be home before dark." He went very still. "That last part," he said. "How'd you know to say that?" "Your cover letter." He looked down at his hands. "You read my cover letter for a facilities job." "I read your whole file." A beat. "I should have read it this morning. I didn't because I built a system where that particular kind of information didn't feel necessary, until it was." He was quiet a long time, rain streaking the window and shifting lines. "I'd need a day or two," he said finally. "Take whatever you need. You're on paid leave as of now." A pause. "For the record." He looked up at that. "For the record," she repeated, "she's a good kid, your daughter." "She asked me. While we were waiting on the curb, she asked if I had kids. I told her about Mia. She asked if Mia was happy. I said I'd try to make sure of it." Something in his face shifted, softened, the way faces do when a small, ordinary thing turns out to have been carrying more weight than expected. "She said it sounded like something a good dad would say." Vanessa didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her daughter was at the kitchen table when Vanessa got home at 6, working through multiplication sheets with the same focused frown she'd inherited from her father, a man who was very good at math and not much else. Crayons scattered across the far end of the table, a half-eaten apple on a paper towel, everything ordinary. The sitter, Gwen, met her at the door. "She's been okay," Gwen said, low, "but quiet, though. The school counselor spent some time with her this afternoon. She was asking for you around 4. "Thank you." Vanessa handed over her bag. "I've got it from here." Sophie looked up at the sound of footsteps. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The 8-year-old with her pencil still raised, the 35-year-old CEO still in her work clothes, but standing differently than she usually did coming home, less armored, more present. Sophie set the pencil down. Vanessa sat across from her among the crayons and the apple and reached over to take her daughter's hand. "Tell me everything," she said. Sophie told her everything. Not the phone version, the whole version, slow and detailed, the way kids tell stories, circling back, adding things she'd forgotten, describing the texture of the curb, the color of the aide's vest, the fact that Marcus's hand had been very cold when she held it, but steady, not shaking, even though hers had been. He had a picture in his pocket. It fell out when he crouched down. It was a little girl, his daughter. Mia. Sophie's eyes went wide. You know about her? I do. Are they nice? I don't know. I've never met her. Vanessa squeezed her hand. Maybe you will, though, if that's something you'd want.
Sophie considered this with the gravity of an 8-year-old weighing something important. I think I'd want to, she said. I think she has to be nice, because he was nice, even while he was hurt. A pause. Mom, why'd you fire him? Vanessa took a moment. She owed her daughter the real answer, not the version where she was the CEO and he was the employee and rules were rules. Because I didn't ask the right question, she said. I saw that he was late and made a decision before I understood why. I had everything I needed to know he was reliable, and I didn't use it. I used the easy part and ignored the hard part. Sophie looked at her, dark and serious. That sounds like a mistake. It was. Did you say sorry? I did. Did he forgive you? Vanessa thought of the clinic, the rain on the glass. I'm not angry at you. I think so, she said, but forgiveness isn't really the end of it. You still have to do the thing you should have done in the first place. The apology's just the start. Then comes the work. Sophie absorbed this. That sounds right. A pause. He said I was brave. You were. I didn't feel brave. You never do. That's kind of what brave is. Marcus called at 9 the next morning. Vanessa was at her desk earlier than usual, which was already very early. She'd slept, if not deeply. The lakefront figures were filed, projections wrapped, the Ashford West review closed out. The work had gone on the way work always did. The machine kept running. I've thought it over, he said when she picked up. A pause. She heard something small and purposeful in the background, a child's voice asking about cereal. Give me a second, he said away from the phone. Blue bowl, Mia, second shelf. Then back, sorry, don't be. I'm going to accept the offer, safety director. A beat. I'm not coming back because you apologized. I'm coming back because it's a good job that pays well, and my daughter needs stability, and I've spent 2 years trying to rebuild something stable for her. That's the reason. Another beat. The apology matters. I'm not brushing it off, but it's not what tipped it. Vanessa found she respected that completely, the precision of it, the refusal to let sentiment do the job logic was supposed to do. Understood, she said. I want the schedule terms in writing, home by 6, flexibility for school events, standard coverage applies for real emergencies, but emergency needs a reasonable definition. I'll have Mira draft it today. Good. Another pause. The child's voice again, louder, something about whether the dog on the cereal box was real or cartoon. It's a cartoon dog, Marcus said, away from the phone, with the patience of a man who'd fielded this question before. Vanessa nearly smiled. One more thing, she said. I'd like to extend an invitation, informally. My daughter asked if she could meet Mia. No obligation at all. It's Sophie asking, not me arranging anything. A pause. She said she thinks Mia must be nice. Silence on the line for a beat. Why's she think that? Because of you. The silence changed shape. This weekend, he said finally. Mia likes the park on Sycamore, the one with the wooden fort. I know it. Saturday, 9:30, if that works. It works. He said goodbye with the same directness he brought to everything. The call ran 4 minutes. Vanessa set the phone down and looked out at the skyline through her floor-to-ceiling window, gray and bright the way the city got on clear, cold mornings, and thought about the particular arithmetic of how much you could miss when you only looked at what was directly in front of you. She thought about an empty chair at a boardroom table, a strip of masking tape on a basement locker, a man who'd held a terrified child's cold hand on a wet curb saying, "You're safe," until it was true, and then gone into work anyway.
She thought about what kind of person cost themselves and how little she'd understood of it while she sat in the room making decisions. Saturday was cold and bright, the kind of clean October air that almost hurt to breathe, the lake throwing light clear across the city. The park on Sycamore had a wooden fort near the south end, painted red and green, the handrails worn smooth by years of small hands, a tire swing, a sand pit mostly unused this time of year. October mornings drew a specific crowd, parents who'd been cooped up 3 days straight, and kids who couldn't be contained one more minute. Vanessa arrived at 9:28. Sophie walked beside her at a pace that was technically casual and completely was not. Marcus and Mia were already there. Mia was 9, had turned 9 2 weeks earlier, with her father's dark eyes, a green winter coat, and the fearlessness particular to a kid raised by someone who faced things head-on. She was perched on the fort's highest platform when they arrived, surveying the park like a general satisfied with the terrain. Marcus stood below, one hand on the rail, watching. Color had come back into his face since the clinic. The bruising along his jaw had faded to yellow at the edges. He wore a dark jacket and the same scuffed boots, and when he turned and saw them crossing the grass, his expression held something Vanessa wasn't sure she'd ever aimed at another person. Plain, unguarded openness. She didn't immediately recognize it because she wasn't used to seeing it. Sophie was already pulling ahead. Mia came down the ladder 2 rungs at a time, inadvisable, and landed on both feet with a thud that would have alarmed most parents and didn't faze Marcus at all. The 2 girls sized each other up. Kids run on a frequency adults mostly forget, a fast, instinctive read on compatibility that skips right past the slow machinery of adult judgment. "You want to go on the tire swing?" Mia asked. "I can push you really high," Sophie said. "Okay, but then you push me," and they ran.
Vanessa and Marcus stood 20 feet apart, watching their daughters clamber over each other at the swing with the total unself-consciousness of kids who'd already decided the other one was fine. Marcus came to stand beside her. "She was up on that fort 20 minutes before you got here," he said. "Says she's mapping the park, keeps a notebook." Vanessa looked. Mia did indeed have a small notebook tucked under one arm. "Sophie records license plates," Vanessa said, "has a whole system. She's trying to find 2 cars with consecutive numbers." A small silence, not uncomfortable. "How are the ribs?" she asked. "Fine, better." A pause. "I start Monday. Mira sent the paperwork Friday. She's efficient." "She said to tell you the lakefront secondary projections came in 6% above forecast." Vanessa looked at him. "You talked to Mira about work projections?" "She called to confirm my badge protocol, mentioned it, seemed pleased." "She would be." Vanessa looked back at the girls, both somehow now on the same tire swing, which didn't seem structurally sound. Mira's efficient and also mildly terrifying. Noticed. A beat. "Think we'll get along?" Sophie was laughing, the sound carrying across the park, that particular frequency of uncomplicated joy that 8-year-olds have easy access to and adults mostly lose. Mia was laughing too. Vanessa watched them and felt something loosen in her chest that had been wound tight for longer than she could place. Not all at once, not entirely, but the beginning of it. The first crack in a structure she'd spent years reinforcing without ever asking whether it still needed to hold that much weight. "She called you a hero," said Vanessa, "on the phone." Marcus was quiet a moment. "She was scared. People use that word when they're scared." "She's still using it now, and she's not scared anymore." He looked at the girls on the swing. "I just did what was in front of me, what needed doing." "I know. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Knowing what needs doing and doing it without waiting to be thanked for it." A pause. "I'm still learning that one." For Vanessa Cole, that was an unusual thing to admit out loud. She knew it. She said it anyway. Marcus looked at her, that same open, unhurried quality on his face, nothing performed about it.
Then he looked back at his daughter, who had claimed the entire tire swing for herself and was spinning slowly, notebook open, green coat bright against the gray-gold morning. "Mia," he called. She looked up. "What's the reconnaissance report?" She checked her notebook with great seriousness. 2 squirrels north bench. 1 dog, medium, probably a lab. The path behind the fort is muddy but passable. She glanced up. Conditions are good. Good to know. A beat. Can Sophie stay for lunch after? He looked at Vanessa. She looked back. I don't see why not, she said. Mia went back to her notebook. Sophie had found a stick somewhere and was investigating an interesting piece of bark near the fort's base. The tire swing turned slowly in the cold, bright air. It was, Vanessa thought, a completely ordinary Saturday, the most ordinary kind there was. Grass and cold air and children and coffee going lukewarm in a paper cup, the sound of a park doing exactly what parks do on October mornings. She had almost let it become impossible. She was here now.